in the recording.
So hello everybody, welcome to our Wise Woman Solstice gathering for 2022, June 2022. We're very happy to be here with you at this midpoint of the year, whichever hemisphere we're in. So I'm Sarah Estelle and I'm going first today actually just because we have seriously wonky internet here in France and we just wanted to make sure that I was present for it. So it's very, very hot here today, extremely hot. So yeah, so my senses are somewhat, what would I say? My clarity is, my Aquarian brain is not the way it normally does, but possibly that's a good thing in the circumstances because it allows the thought patterns to be less present. So what am I bringing today? So for anybody that's been watching us share for the past few months, you may or may not know that I work a lot with trees, and where we live, I have a couple of what I call temples. One's under a very old oak tree. And I've been working with oak for years and years, and I still am. But in the last few weeks, I've been sitting under the willow tree. It's a very old willow tree, very thick trunk, and it's kind of leans at these extraordinary angles. And you think, how on earth do you manage to stand up? But it does. Has an amazing canopy, and actually is on a piece of ground that goes like that. So I've been spending a lot of time under willow and absorbing willow energy and realizing the reflections that have been coming back to me, how related it is. Obvious, well, maybe not obviously, but willows love water. So they love the water element and they love the emotional flow. They're very connected to priestess energy and to the temples of old. And I hadn't really connected into that before because in the batch flower essence range, willow is, I've always thought of willow as for forgiveness and all of those things, which it probably is, but I'm just seeing it in a new light. So as I've sat under willow, what's been happening around me is really interesting because lots of pieces of my life and my business actually are not, which has been a little bit interesting on many, many levels. But what I'm seeing as the old continues to disappear is a kind of opening up of a larger creativity that is more spontaneous and that is more true for the moment. And I'm not really quite sure what that means other than what I'm saying. And lots of clients reflecting the similar things back to me, you know, things that we've done for a while aren't quite, you know, it's just not the same anymore. And so we're making different decisions and also meeting people and seeing it in myself as well, that there is what I'm calling, and as we were chatting beforehand, there always is a choice point. We always have had those. But for me right now, it's very present that we have a choice for me, just to allow the willow space to allow me to go into a more feminine, bendy, surrendering place and just allow rather than trying to hold on to the old, which would be maybe why oak has spoken to me for so long, because it's supported that structure, which is now long and really. Yeah, so I was sitting under the willow this morning and really feeling into the willow energies and seeing how she bends and how she has this extraordinary propensity to defy gravity and to just bend and twist and surrender, work with source because she's working with the water, and really just allow herself to move in different directions in different places and still be supported, even though she's got this huge, very, very heavy weight of wood that, you know, technically it's a bit like the bumblebee. If the bumblebee knew that its wings weren't big enough to fly, maybe it wouldn't be able to fly, but it doesn't know that. So it almost feels a similar thing with willow. And so here I am today with no internet, but somehow still present and working with an energy that's allowing me to be present. So I'm not sure if there's a huge amount of clarity in that, other than just what I'm witnessing in myself and others, if I was to sum it up, is just like a completely more spontaneous way of living, more connected to my creativity, and more connected to what's needed now in order for the next generations to come, and really just making sure we're present for that. And so from that, thank you, Willow, for supporting me and offering that, and thank you to the internet for allowing me to still be here. Is it Kaylin? Kaylin, yes. To reflect back the stars, what the stars are telling us right now.
And thank you. And so delighted that we got to hear your wisdom. And I love that you said midsummer for the June solstice, because I know where you're living in France and a lot of the Celtic world and other places, they did see the June solstice as midsummer's day, and the winter solstice as midwinter. And the reason is because they felt the seasons of summer started with Beltane. And so, and it ended with probably around the August cross quarter. And so it would be midsummer, that midpoint between those cross quarter points. And so many feel that the June solstice starts summer, but it doesn't, because we've already been in it, definitely here in the desert Southwest where I live, 100-degree temperatures here too. So, I'm just delighted to share a little bit about this aspect of what's happening in the sky. So every solstice, every June solstice, so regardless of whether you're in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere and experiencing either summer or winter as your season, the sun is in a certain place in the sky, and it's on what we call the galactic cross at the galactic edge. Or the edge of our galaxy. So it's the one place where we look out beyond our galaxy. And so the December solstice is rising on the galactic cross at the galactic center, looking at the center of the galaxy. So this solstice is looking at the edge of the galaxy. And these solstice points rising right on the cross, where the plane of the galaxy, the plane of the solar system intersects the plane of the galaxy, and the sun is rising right on that cross. And it does it from at least 1962 to 2034. That's a 72-year window. But the 144-year window, putting 72 years on either side of that, is 1926 to 2070. And it lets us know we're at a major turning of an age, massive turning of an age, because these solstice points can only be here every in this configuration every 26,000 years, and in a configuration every 13,000 years. So they switch places in 13,000 years. And the solstice points are where the sun stands still. Solstice literally means stand still of the sun. And the sun rises for 3 days in the exact same place in the sky. It's pretty much rising near the same place for about 3 weeks around the solstice, but we could say the sun is on the cross for 3 days. The sun on the cross for 3 days might remind us of some other stories we've heard. Anyway, so it's a powerful time, and because it's at this galactic point at the edge of the galaxy, it's also bringing in and transmitting mysteries from beyond our galaxy. So that's pretty cool to have that. To be able to tune into that. So if we look at the sun on the summer solstice, then we're looking, it's the doorway. It's like the transmitter of the mysteries in the doorway into other realms and dimensions. So we can tune into that and see what's coming through from the galactic cross at the galactic edge, and things coming in from beyond our galaxy to help inform us. So in this time of the greatest amount of light in the northern hemisphere, the least amount of light in the southern hemisphere, and it represents a seasonal shift, which is also super important to just tune into. The the other thing I wanted to speak to is how we're also in the time of the sun being with the star Sirius. And this happens around this time every year. It was in the United States, the July 4th of 1776, the sun was exactly conjunct Sirius when they signed the Declaration of Independence. That was purposely planned. The founding fathers, Freemasons, or whoever they, whatever their mystical background was aware of that. And they used that time to create the Declaration of Independence and sign it on that day. Now it has shifted, because it does shift over time. It's moving 1 degree every 72 years. It now happens more precisely on July 6th, when the sun is conjunct Sirius. And really from the end of May until the beginning of August, or sometime in August, depending on your latitude, the sun is with Sirius and we don't see it. It's like 70 days with the sun. And one of the things that happens in the month of July, aside from the exact sun-Sirius connection, is that the Mayans have what they call the day out of time. That happens on July 25th. And then they start their new year and they call it a galactic new year, or whatever however they were describing that new year, on July 26th. So they take this day out of time. Wasn't in time, it was out of time. And it used to be that they did that when the sun was conjunct Sirius, but it has shifted so much over thousands of years of whenever this was something that was put into place, that it doesn't happen when the sun is conjunct Sirius any longer, but the sun is still with Sirius. Now, one of the reasons Sirius is such an important star to almost all the cultures around the planet is that it's the brightest star in our night sky. And many will say that it's the beings from Sirius that came to and created, maybe it was the Atlantis, the land of Atlantis, and then the Atlanteans went to Egypt and to British Isles, and in that area after Atlantis sank. But they were very strongly connected to this star, the star Sirius. And in Egypt, literally, when the star Sirius rose as a morning star, and that used to happen in June, around more closer to the solstice, then that was when the Nile would start flooding. And they knew it was part of their seasonal calendar of how they knew what was happening. So Sirius is a very important star for us to connect to. We can't see it right now, but we know the sun is there. So when you're tuning into the sun, you can tune into this star. And I will post in the show notes a video that talks all about Sirius magic. And then what I wanted to do is just complete my sharing here with an ode to Sirius, as I thought that might be fun for us. So here it is. Ode to Sirius and the sun as seen from the earth. Each year the sun and Sirius meet for 70 days in the summer heat, illuminating a time out of time where magic and mystery miraculously align. The dog days are filled with glorious light when we might receive deep, profound insight. Look toward the luminous, bright, shining sun where all that was is now being redone. As we focus on this wondrous creation portal, it helps us remember we are divinely immortal. And we are co-creators of magical delight, imagining a new world now within our sight. In this new world, we surely will find wisdom that goes beyond linear time and the challenging limits of our rational mind, transforming ourselves in ways that are loving and kind. And so the reason these are called the dog days of summer is because Sirius is the dog star. To many cultures, it was a wolf, it was a dog, and it's again, the brightest star in our night sky. So an amazing time to be alive and to be witness to the solstice, to the sun with Sirius, and to the time out of time. So with that, I'm going to pass this off to Nalini, who's going to wow us with her insights and wisdom.
Thank you, Kaylin. I don't know about wow factor. I think the cosmos is taking care of that just fine for all of us. There are a couple of things that I noticed, things that came up for what you were talking about. What they have proven, archaeologically at this point is that wherever there have been temple complexes that were in pyramidal form, specifically, they have found skeletons with elongated skulls. And these beings were allegedly, or were attributed to, coming from maybe Atlantis, but Sirius. These were Syrian beings. It's the Syrians who were the original architects of the pyramid-shaped temples all over. And there used to be, there still sort of are, 12 of those that were primary, and then another set of them that were secondary all along the Nile. And the flooding used to come right up to the gates during this particular timing. And part of the reason for that, the Nile is actually, its flow is actually engineered. If you look at it geographically, it flows the wrong way. And so this is, it does what it does because of stellar pull. And as I was looking into this years ago, it's like Gaia sits in the middle of these two currents of stars that go in a certain direction. And the Nile is attuned to one of them, and all of the other flows on Gaia's surface are attuned to other geomagnetic forces. So it's fascinating that this was known long before any of our archaeology, anyone on the planet actually understands what happened here. And attuning to these mysteries, the solstices, the equinoxes, the cross quarters, actually brings us into more of a cosmic sense of self. And what Source brought through for me this morning as I was sitting here thinking, gee, I don't know what I'm going to talk about, because I never do. She just comes through. And it's true for all of you as well. But it's a little bit like what Sarah was talking about with the willow. There's this grand trunk and these amazing roots. You know, I've lived where willows were in a creek or along a riverbed, and they have just these amazing arched roots that go down, and they almost form a circle, and there's almost a temple format underneath them. And then the branches mirror that up above. I remember at one of my consulting gigs, you know, doing computer work years ago, I was working in a place that had these immense willow trees outdoors. I never could figure out why they were out in this courtyard, because they were too old to have been planted as part of the landscaping. And there was no river or lake or any kind of water in evidence there in this, you know, nasty banking complex. But I would go sit there to eat my lunch under these willow trees, and I would watch the branches sway. And it was just, I'm sitting in the arms of the goddess, and her tresses are flowing around me. And that is where our cosmic sense of self lives. She's all, she, he, you know, gender doesn't really matter. It's not genderized, is always beneath what we believe ourselves to be. So for instance, in our blood, we believe that RNA, DNA, et cetera, affects our blood and blood type and all that. We're wrong. I mean, you know, the doctors will get very upset with me for saying that, but it's certainly there and it's certainly a factor. But these are the overlays. These are these so-called human overlays on our cosmic sense of self. What our blood, the waters of our body, the tissues of our bodies are formed of are electromagnetic frequency currents. And when we tune into that, it tunes into the same substance of those rivers of stars, of the various poles of Gaia, and of the other celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, the other planets that we're aware of, and some that we're just learning about. We tune into that. And as we tune into that, we become more of who we are. You know, our job, as I have experienced it in this life and am experiencing it more and more, is to bring the various impulses that always affect us all the time, bring those into a singularity, as though we're a planet or whatever, we are a celestial body, and bring them into a harmony within us that brings all these factors to bear. And then this other stuff, you know, that's the game show, that's the stage set and the props and the costumes and the role we chose to play. And all of the old ones, it's like what Sarah was talking about, what Kaylin's talking about with the changes, like even the processions are moving forward. They're not at the same degrees anymore. All of the old ones are, if not broken at the moment, just dissolving at love speed. And so the more we tune into this cosmic sense of self, these cosmic currents, whether it's a galactic identity or not, I'm finding any identity problematic at the moment. So that's just me. But, bringing all this galactic information in as we feel, to feeling what resonates and what doesn't. It's not right or wrong. It's just, oh, this resonates. Okay, this can stay here and integrate and come home. And that doesn't. So we'll just be over here. It's not this whole thing we've been taught about right and wrong. In my garden when I lived in Berkeley, I had one fence that had ivy planted, or actually it just planted itself there. And then I had another fence that had honeysuckle. And right at the join of the fence, there was a gap this big. It's like the ivy and the honeysuckle were not going to deal with one another. And it was absolutely not manicured. It was not, the gardeners, it was nothing we did. And there was one day where I decided to do an experiment. And so I went out and I took a strand of ivy and a tendril of honeysuckle, and I kind of just gently, not to offend them, wove them around each other and was like, okay, well, let's just see how you do. I came out the next morning and the gap was wider. It's like, no, we are not doing this. So what resonates understands itself. Our celestial being, our cosmic sense of self knows what it is, who we are, and what's good for us and what isn't. And one of the lessons I'm watching play out on this world right now, and especially with this solstice wave, is just amplifying that to the nth degree, is what resonates, let that integrate, let what's good for us actually be part of us, and just let the rest go. That'll be good for somebody else. Something else, or maybe not. But anyway, with that, I'm going to pass it off to Elizabeth, our galactic historian, anthropologist, who spends her life doing this kind of stuff. So anyway,
thank you. I just love what everyone said. So I'm going to ride on this river and flow and water and waves piece, and I think I want to bring attention to something that's kind of underneath a lot of the flow that's going on, that our bodies are actually deeply connected to. And I love, Nalini, that you brought up the blood piece, because it's so true. We have this whole other concept of biology that is based in electromagnetics, and that's more true than anything. Which is interesting because our electromagnetic field of the planet is disappearing, and it's about 30% less at the moment and exponentially dropping because we're at the end of an age. But what that does is it looks like chaos for a minute. But if anybody's ever stirred water around and then stirred it the other direction, at first, there's this bubbly, amazing sort of primordial chaos that happens. And it turns out that during that time, especially in biodynamics, which you do this on purpose in biodynamics, and also underneath the pyramids, they would harness that to create negative ion fields where the water would create these chaotic pools and then bubble up. Well, that's when all of this oxygen gets saturated in the water, and the water becomes more powerful than it did before, because now it can do the job of water more than it was doing before. And water has an incredible amount of power. Like, it was something like 10 bars of TNT per gallon. If you were to try to separate oxygen from hydrogen in 1 gallon of water, it would literally be worth 10 sticks of TNT worth of energy, which is mind-blowing. So considering how much water we're made of, and then our Gaia planet her soul is literally water. There's 3 times as much water underneath our feet, under the mantle, than there is on the surface of our planet. So she truly is a water planet. And water has memory and all these amazing factors. There's this other flow, this very subtle one, that when we do go look out beyond the galaxy, you can see it in the big giant structures of the galactic called Laniakea. The one that we're part of is called Laniakea, and they flow like rivers. And then when you zoom out even more, there's very clear, gorgeous electromagnetic spinning going on, these double torus structures of galaxies where the galaxies are like little molecules and the rest of it is flowing. It's incredible what the universe really looks like. But where is it all going? Where is it flowing to? Well, in mysticism, it's flowing back to source. So there's this one really big river, probably made of universes, that comes from and then flows back home. And so this is really an amazing concept to apply to your human experience. So I want to bring up a totally new system in the body that most people don't know exists because it was discovered like 4 years ago. It's called the premovascular system. And it's this microtubule system inside the lymphatic system. Now, if you really look at the lymphatic system, we don't really understand a lot about it. And people are very confused about what the lymphatic system is. Even just recently, we realized that there's this huge lymphatic system inside the brain. We didn't realize that the lymphatic system even got into the brain. And it only opens when you're asleep, which is amazing because that means the flow of this other system, the premovascular system, brings light into the brain. Well, this premovascular system that's sort of embedded in the lymph, and the lymph is run by the fascia. And this is important because movement is literally causing the lymphatic system to move. And movement happens in this universe because of asymmetry. So that's really something to ponder, that there always has to be a level of imbalance for movement to occur in reality, especially with consciousness. Inside the universe. When you go into the void, everything's still because everything's perfectly in balance and nothing's moving. And there's plenty of light, it just doesn't have a source. It's not moving. But inside the universe, everything's moving because there's a flow of the individuation moving back home to the universal and then back again. And the premovascular system, when you go in and look at it, there's these very long nuclei inside of these cells that are in these microtubules. And they have video and photos of these long nuclei moving photons around the body. That means that this is what we know as the light body. It's literally a system in your body. And when you go to sleep, and when you meditate and you stop your mind, and you become still, it opens up into the brain. And so that literally means that light is brought into the brain mind in meditation and in sleep. So this is just the very beginnings of something that we are beginning to start to look at from a scientific perspective, but that the mystics already knew, that you have many, many bodies. And these bodies are all working in flow and moving light. And that this light is also moving in a greater river, the greatest river of all, the river of consciousness that moves into source, into stillness and back out again, like the flow of tides. So when we're examining a human life, as we are now in the present, hanging out with these really amazing alignments, with different kinds of qualities of light from the stars, like the star Sirius or Vega or the Seven Sisters, or whichever stars really are pulling you or aligning with you or resonating with you. There's always going to be some, and they're all conscious. In fact, if you really do proper gazing at a star, you'll see fractals coming off the star, which is the mysteries that the star offers us. And if you do good sun gazing towards the end of the evening or the very beginning of the day, that happens too. I've had many clients and myself reporting that you can see these fractals of light come off the sun. So all this leads to something practical. How do you make sure your light body is healthy Well, you need to meditate. Meditating is the number one thing you can be doing. And then, of course, making sure you're really properly having a space to sleep so that you can allow your light body to recharge your brain, because that's what it's doing. But doing gazing, bringing light into your life, gazing on nature, everything is photonic. You are bioluminescent. Your body's literally creating light. It's measurable. And some humans get really good at this, and then you can see them glow. And this is really kind of a neat measurable effect of the enlightenment process. But it's about gaining and maintaining light so that you can ride waves of consciousness and change and initiations and losses and gains and alignments. And of course, whatever resonates with you, bringing it closer just builds your light body even more so that you become a source of endless light for everyone else too. And that's the cool part about the enlightenment process, I think, is that it's not quite enough just to be enlightened. Then you have the job of being able to go out and be present and be available to all living beings as a source of light. And we have examples of that already in the sky. So we have wonderful examples and lessons and friends in the stars who are teaching us, and our ancient family already knew all of this. So they made sure to be conscious and aware and receiving as these mysteries change a little bit every year. And that's what's so amazing about it, because as the processions shift, well, that means more new cool stuff's available. And we are in a very different place in space than we've ever been before as a galaxy. And the planet, of course, as her electromagnetic field goes internal, well, she's literally internalizing these qualities of light too. And it's a mutual benefit experience for humanity, for all living beings on the planet, and for the earth. So that's what was coming up as everyone was speaking, to bring an awareness of the grand river of consciousness, and then back down to the inner little bitty rivers of light inside of us in the primovascular system, which we're going to learn more about, I hope, in the next coming years, and be able to use it properly to heal ourselves, because you can. And when you put attention on your body and different parts of your body, it does actually cause more light to move to that part of your body. So these are the kinds of practices that can come up right now to get you through these difficult times and initiations that are happening for all of us. So I hope that's helpful to everyone, and that over the next solstice, this coming solstice over the next week is really rich and beautiful with these realizations as you become more aware of your true cosmic self.